Today, let's talk about gauges. I've had a problem with my water temperature gauge. It stopped working. I put sending units in it. I ran a new wire to it. It's just the gauge itself and the stock cluster went bad. And the oil pressure gauge reads oil pressure all the time. So I got a gauge issue with the stock cluster. So I put a set of aftermarket gauges in the car. Now there's a million different gauges out there that you can pick and choose from. You can go high dollar, or you can go a little bit on the cheap route, which is, the way I went, to keep the car, budget friendly. I picked these up at AutoZone, and I'm probably going to butcher the name of them, but EQQS, EQQUS. I checked them out on the internet. Not a whole lot of information on the internet from what I found of them on there as far as like reviews go for these gauges. But I said, what the hell, let's go ahead, let's buy a set and try them out. So that's what I did. I bought, your volt gauge, water temp, oil pressure, and then while I was at it, I went ahead and bought a tack. With it, the tack does include a shift light and a memory recall, just like your big, fancy, higher-end tacks that cost a bunch of money. And I think the 3-pack gauge kit that I bought, I think it was like right around 40-45 bucks. Not bad. I figure, if they're junk, I'm out 45 bucks. If they work, I just saved a bunch of money. The tack, I think I got it at Jegs. I think it was 120 bucks. Not badly priced. I figured, what the hell, we'll give them a try. And so far, I've had them in the car for a few months now, and I love them. I mean, they seem to be working flawlessly. I mean, my oil pressure seems to be spot on from what it was with my factory gauge before it quit working. My water temperature seems to be dead on the money from where it was on the stock gauge before it quit working. Volt gauge is right on. The tack is, it's right on. I was, quite impressed when they have a real good quality. And the little gauges, I got the 2 1/16, I do believe is what size they are. Instead of having, like the big U-shaped strap that goes in the back with the 2 little nuts on them, they have one big round piece of plastic with threads on it, and the housing of the gauge has threads cut into it. You just screw that big nut on there. They are real simple, real easy to put together. And we'll not get into like mounting. I'll show you guys where I mounted mine, because there's, like buying the gauges, there's a million different ways you can mount them with different pods and, brackets, whatever. You can pretty much do that figure that part out on your own, where you guys want to put them. But, I'll show you what I did with mine and what I used on mine. So let's get into it. I'll show you what we did here. Right here you can see I got my volt, water temp, and oil pressure. Now, I know places like LMR, American Muscle, Summit, Jegs, you can get it eBay, Amazon, wherever. Autometer makes it. Sells a nice little bracket that goes right here, right below your radio, where some of us have, it would have just been a cubby hole right there. And then some of them, like my car, had a factory CD player right there. Now what I did, I didn't buy that bracket that goes right there that like Autometer makes, because I mean, for what it is and what it does, I'm sure it's a real nice piece, because Autometer makes excellent stuff. But it's like $50 for that bracket, and I just didn't, you know, I didn't want to spend that. So what I did, the gauge kit that I bought you know how they come with the little bracket, it fits perfect in there. It even lines up the bolt holes on the top of the bracket. You know, they give you, there's like, I think there's 6 sets of holes going across the top rail of it there, so you can mount the gauge bracket. They line up perfect with the existing holes that hold the trim bezel in place, and that's what I use. Now, it is a bit of a bear to get in there to put the screws back up in, but it can be done. Now, as far as the tack goes, right here is what I've got. I mounted it right here. You know, it's not, as you can see, it's not bolted to the dash. I got this from LMR, this UPR tack bracket. Now what it does, you take your 2 screws out right here for your heater controls, you place the bracket up in there, put the 2 screws back in, and then like on this side of the bracket right here, there's 2 holes, and they give you 2 little screws. I was hesitant on putting them in because I'm big on not wanting to put holes in the dash, but right here where they go, it's a real big, thick, heavy piece of plastic of the dash, so I went ahead and put them in, because it shook around a lot. I mean, as you can see, it's pretty solid right now with them 2 screws in right here and the 2 right here. This bracket on LMR is like $40-50. Now I did spend that because, you know, I didn't want to like put holes in up here or stick it right here and have it cover everything. And I mean, as you can tell, I got white face gauge covers from them. I think I got those from CJ Pony Parts for them. I did the heater controls also, as you can see. But anyway, let's get back to the gauges here. And they have incandescent bulbs that come with them, and they have different color, like little gel things you can slide over the bulbs. I mean, it's daylight, you're probably not going to be able to see it real good, but like, I mean, you can see it a little bit on the tack. They're not real bright. What I did, I haven't got to the tack yet, because it takes, I believe they're a real small push-in bulb. I can't remember the number of them, but I didn't get them. I got to order them yet. But like on the gauges, I mean, as you can see on them, I changed it, but they just take a 194 push-in bulb, 1 in each gauge. I think the tack has 3 or 4 in the back of it. I changed them out to blue LEDs, as I did with my heater controls and my instrument cluster. Now, believe me, they are blue. I know here on camera they look purple, but they are blue. Now, as far as like hooking the gauges up, the 3-pack comes with everything. The other thing it does not come with is wires to wire up the volt gauge. I mean, you got to supply that yourself, but it comes with the connectors. The oil pressure gauge comes with the line kit and everything needed for it. The tack comes with plenty of wire for it. Now, on this tack, a lot of people on the internet say you have to get like a tack driver from like MSD or autometer to hook this tack up. You don't have to. But it's real simple. It's real easy to do. And I should have wrote it down so I could told you guys where to tie into for a tack signal at, but I didn't. I forgot to do it. But anyway, you can go on YouTube and look up 4.6 Savage. He has a great video on his tack install and how he wired his up. He took his instrument cluster out, pulled it out of the dash, unplugged it, and I do believe the plug you need, there's 2 plugs on them. One on the left is about where the speedometer is, and one on the right is about where the tack is. The white plug would be on the right hand side of the cluster where your tack is, has a signal wire for your factory tack. I believe it is a brown wire with a yellow tracer. Don't quote me on that. Go ahead, go to his channel. You know, while you're on there, like, subscribe. He's got some great videos with some great content on them. But he's got an excellent video on wiring a tack up into the factory wiring behind the cluster. He went as far as using the tack signal wire, the ground, and the power wire for the light on his tack. I didn't do that. I just used the tack signal wire. I ran wires down for the ground on my tack and for the light down to these when I wired these up. And on these, I got the power and ground for the lights off the back of the radio, because I was in there, I had changed the radio in it, I was wiring it up, so I just went ahead, wired them into that. Now your volt gauge, all you need is a ground and a 12 volt wire power that is keyed. This is all you need there. And then the water temp, you know, they're mechanical. They are mechanical gauges, they're not electric. You just run the probe out to the car, out under the hood, you know, plug it in, you know, screw it in. There's a spot on the left-hand side, back of the block by the motor mount you can use, or there's 2, like on the SN95 cars, there's 2 places on the intake on the coolant crossover you can tie into. One is for the factory gauge, the sending unit. It is on the right hand side. The left hand side, you want to keep that sending unit, because that is for your computer, that's for your fan and everything else on your computer, everything else on the car. You want to leave that in there. Without that one in there, you'll get a check engine light and your fan will run constantly. So you can either use the one down behind the motor mount on the left hand side, or you can use the one for your factory water temperature gauge. Oil pressure, you just run it down. You can tie into your oil sending unit that's down by the oil filter, or you can just take your factory sending unit out, screw your fitting in for your line for your aftermarket gauge there. Now on that oil pressure gauge, what I strongly recommend you do is the plastic tubing that comes with the gauge, just throw it in the trash. I mean, they're junk. They leak. I've never had no luck with the plastic tubing. I've always had them leak. What you can do is, it was like 14, 15 bucks at AutoZone, little copper tubing. It was on a roll, and it came with a couple fittings and your nuts and the ferrules for it and everything. Come with it. You buy it separately, and it takes you want to get 2 packs, because one ain't quite long enough. You end up like 6 inches short from going from the engine, routing it into the engine bay and up under the dash to the gauge. If you put your gauge where I put mine. Now, if you go like the single gauge pod on the column, or the instrument cluster bezel, you buy the one with you put the gauges in the corner, or an A-pillar pod. I do not know how much you'll need for that, but I do know to put it down below your radio, you need 2, because you're going to be a little short. Or you can spend a little bit more money and buy couple fittings and like a number 4 braided stainless steel hose and put on it. You can go that route too. But I mean, I've used both. When I had my old drag car, I used a braided stainless line. But for this, it's just a street car. It's basically my everyday work beater. I just use the copper tubing. I've used the copper tubing on 100 different vehicles before. I've had plenty of luck with it. I've never had an issue with the copper tubing leaking. But I've always had an issue with the plastic. I mean, some of you guys may get by with the plastic. I mean, that's up to you. You do what you want. It's your car. But I recommend the copper. And that's really, I mean, that's about it. I mean, you don't even have to really mount them. Like I said, you don't have to mount them where I did. I just showed you where I did mine. Like I said, you can get the steering column pod that holds 1 gauge. They make an instrument cluster bezel that has a gauge in each corner. You got your A-pillar pods for like 1, 2, 3. I think I seen one time that had like 4 or 5 gauges in it. Pretty much went from the headliner to the dash. Or you make one that goes in place of the factory clock that holds 2 gauges. I've seen pods that go, it may just be a Fox body thing, but they do make a pod that holds 2 gauges that go in your AC vents. I know they make them for a Fox body. I don't remember seeing them for an SN95, but that's not saying they don't make it. I probably just never paid that much attention to it before. Or, like I said, Autometer makes one that goes in that cubbyhole area below your radio, which, like I told you guys, I didn't use. I used the gauge mount that came with the gauges, because it fits great in there. But anyway, I mean, that's all for today's video. And don't forget, like, subscribe, hit the bell. That way you'll know when we bring up a new one. And don't forget to go check out 4.6 Savage's channel on his video. I can't remember the title of the video, but he's got a great video on wiring up your tack, and he breaks down what pin you need on the plug for the tack signal, and the ground, and your power wire for your lights. I do believe, like I said, don't quote me on it, I do believe the tack signal wire is brown with a yellow tracer. But just go ahead, go on there and look, give him a like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on